Autism Quality of Life podcast, episode 13.
Jumped into a faculty position in Cincinnati as well in 2012. It's really been sort of my main goal is working out the kinks in this idea of developing an intervention. And now we're really at the point where we're doing it with families and adolescents with autism and kind of trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work and how to make it as effective as possible.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Autism Quality of Life podcast. Today I have Dr. Amie Duncan with me. Amie is a clinical psychologist and assistant professor at the Kelly O'Leary Center for Autism Spectrum Disorders at Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center. She runs the Autism Adolescent Assessment Clinic, and her research focuses on developing interventions to teach critical daily living skills to adolescents with autism and their families so that they can be more successful in areas such as independent living, employment, and post-secondary education. Amie, thanks so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Sure. Would you mind telling our audience a bit more about you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you kind of said it in a nutshell, but I will say I've become really passionate and you know, it's something I've sort of dedicated the last 10 years of my career or so to really focusing on adolescents and young adults with autism spectrum disorders and really their families to, you know, figure out how we improve outcome and really help them, you know, reach the goals that they're setting, you know, in high school or earlier than that. So that's kind of professionally where I've been going and what I'm, you know, really excited about some of the things, you know, we've been working on both at Cincinnati Children's with kind of my research lab and our clinical team as well.
Great. Okay, so you're currently in Cincinnati, and where did you grow up? Where are some of the places that you've done your work in?
Yeah, well, I grew up in Warren, Ohio, which probably no one's heard of, but it's near between kind of Youngstown and Cleveland, Ohio. And then from there, ended up going to the University of Dayton, which is in Dayton, Ohio, and really kind of got started working with a bunch of different families of younger kids with autism as part of a internship for being a psychology major. And from there, I kind of, you know, took a leap of faith and moved to Tuscaloosa, Alabama,
Wow.
where I always joke it's a great place and I love everything about the program there, but it's also a great place to go to grad school because there's just not a lot to do there, especially, you know, once college football is over. But moved there and, you know, got a lot more experience doing kind of assessment and treatment. Again, ended up kind of working with a lot of young kids who were diagnosed with autism. But what was really kind of just a really unique opportunity and really was kind of like a fork in the road for me in more ways than one was while I was there, we started up a program at University of Alabama called the UAX program. And it was a college transition support program for undergraduates who got accepted into Alabama, but also had a autism spectrum disorder. And I got to be sort of it was super, super exciting, super just, you know, kind of wonderful to be a part of from the ground up. But I was sort of the guinea pig therapist in the program because I was the one who was sort of interested in working with adults and teens. And so saw the first few clients that came through that program, you know, with the goal really being, you know, academic and social, you know, making sure that, you know, they're doing well in their classes, but also, you know, interacting with their peers and joining clubs if they want to do that. But what was interesting about it was that, you know, one of the things that became really apparent that I don't think any of us were expecting to be such a deficit in a way was that, you know, just sort of a lot of basic independent living skills, you know, things like setting an alarm and taking a shower and, you know, changing your clothes if you've worn them for 2 days were things that were really hard for a lot of the students who were in the program. And that's sort of what really got me interested in this idea of kind of working on building daily living skills for teens and young adults with high functioning autism, just so that would be, a soft skill that wouldn't prevent them from doing well in something like college or, getting a job and maintaining a job. So it's really neat to be a part of that. And then really ever since then, I did my internship at JFK Partners in Denver, and they're doing some really cool intervention work out there. So it was nice to be kind of a part of a project where I saw how other people were developing and testing interventions to see if they were effective. And then coming to Cincinnati, which I've been here since 2009, the postdoc for 3 years, and then jumped into a faculty position in Cincinnati as well in 2012. It's really been sort of my main goal is working out the kinks in this idea of developing an intervention. And now we're really at the point where we're doing it with families and adolescents with autism and kind of trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work and how to make it as effective as possible.
That is so great. It sounds like so much of your past experiences have really led to where you're at today with developing the daily living skills intervention. Would you mind sharing with our audience a bit about the background of the intervention? So what does it mean to provide an intervention to teach daily living skills? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, it's super fun. I joke with my 4-year-old son. He thinks it's pretty hilarious that I'm bringing like laundry and detergent and cooking supplies to work a lot of the time. But really, what it's about is, for the teens, it's teaching them these sort of what we've identified, again, kind of over a lot of testing and working with, teens in both the school settings and the clinic settings and their families, kind of what are these skills that we feel like, are lacking, are things that, teens with autism, for whatever reason, aren't picking up, maybe as easily or as quickly in the same way as some other teens might. But then what are the ones that are also really important in terms of them being able to, once they're out of high school, go on to college, get a job, these sorts of things. And so the ones that we've ended up kind of really honing in on, we've developed kind of 4 different modules of skills. The first one being really kind of hygiene. And the way that we tackle that is sort of helping the teen and the family develop a system for a morning routine or a nighttime routine that might include showering, taking medication, putting on deodorant, shaving, changing clothes, all those things. Another area that we're also looking at is laundry. So, everything from separating clothes, using a washer and dryer, and putting the clothes away. And then we do a lot with cooking as well as grocery shopping. So really, navigating the whole kitchen. So everything from, no-cook recipes, if you're really aversive to, using any appliance, you can actually, survive. And, but also, that the stove and the oven, if you are safe and smart about it, there, because there's a lot of anxiety around that for some of our teens about cooking on that. And then grocery shopping kind of leads really nicely into money management, which is probably the one that the parents really want the most of, because it's a very nebulous, complex topic, really, I think, for anyone. But, everything from really sort of basic price comparison, knowing, we play this Price is Right game. That's one of like my favorite moments of the intervention that we've had. And
nice.
we set it up so, we just had like a gallon of milk and, basic things that a lot of us buy on a regular basis, 12-pack of Coca-Cola, things like that, and ask the teens what it was. And we record all our sessions more for research purposes than anything else. But the teens, for the gallon of milk, were saying everything from, $3 to $65. And it was like, whoa, we thought we got maybe more work to do there than we thought.
Uh-huh.
So the money piece, price comparison, knowing what things cost, budgeting, but then also just being able to, go to the store and knowing how to use self-checkout, knowing how to find items, how to figure out if generic is better than not generic, things like that. So that's really kind of the basic skills that we teach in the intervention. And the piece that I'm excited to see how it shakes out with, we're running a group right now. A lot of the teens and some of the parents expressed that that they were feeling some anxiety around this topic of growing up, whether it be, it's a big change to go from high school to the adult world. Mm-hmm. But also a lot of these skills, I think, kind of really make them feel like adults and they're moving into that stage. So we're doing sort of a component to help them cope with that transition. What are some things that you can be doing, just kind of self-care, but also just some, anxiety, mood management tools that are pretty simple, but would be helpful going forward.
Yeah. So what ages is a group like this suitable for?
Now, what we're really targeting is sort of the 14 to 18-year-old age range. So, we're sort of getting kids who are on either the tail end of their 8th grade year into their senior year. And almost ideally, I think if we can get them on the younger side of things, it gives families and the teens more time to work on these skills. But I always say, there's no wrong time to work on it. I think mm-hmm. the biggest thing is that, you tackle these things and try to build these skills. So it's really geared towards high schoolers. That's kind of what the content of the intervention is for, as well as sort of the strategies that we're implementing. We know they're effective for adolescents with high-functioning autism.
Okay, that's great. Yeah. So I'm sure the earlier they can learn these skills, obviously the better, but you are focusing on high school age right now. Okay. And so what is the length of the actual program? How long does it go for?
Right now, it's a 15-week intervention. And so we cover all those skills that I just mentioned, in those 15 weeks, and they're 90-minute sessions. And they're sessions, they're attended by both the parents and the teens every session. Okay. And the teens kind of really go off, for the most part, and practice the actual skill that we're working on. And the parents, we really brainstorm how things are going in terms of skill development, what's working, what's not working, how can we get buy-in and motivation up in the teen. So it really, I think the coolest byproduct of the group is that, the parents really get to know each other in a really cohesive way and share, just how things are going and what's working and not working. But then the teens, while it's not a social skills group, we of course model appropriate social skills, but it's something that they definitely are, learning social skills but also making friendships in the group, because there's, we run the group 6 to 8 kids are in each group. And so it's a pretty large group, but it gives everyone kind of an opportunity. There's someone in the group who probably has some interest that you enjoy. Video games is the big one. So most of them come in and like some sort of video game and can bond over that, but other interests as well, or, find out they live, close to each other. So that's been a nice kind of byproduct of the group.
Definitely. Yes, even just bonding over the fact that they might struggle with doing laundry can bring some people together.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, this is so great. So as a clinician, I'm extremely excited by this topic and the fact that you're currently testing out this intervention. So where could other professionals and individuals who might be interested in implementing this down the road, so learning about what you are currently doing, where can they learn about this?
Right now, I think I would be, overjoyed to talk about this with anyone. I think daily living skills doesn't get necessarily the attention that it deserves. We're at the point where we're sort of, finalizing the manual for the intervention, and something that we could share with others if they're interested. Here are the strategies that we know, from the last several groups we've run that work really well. Video modeling, the teens really enjoy. So we've got some videos that have already been developed and that we've kind of put together that we use. So it's something I'm always happy to talk to families about. This tends to be an area that occupational therapists are, this is really in their wheelhouse. And I think that's something like we're bringing OTs in to kind of give us an idea. Are we on the right path? Are we teaching skills the right way? But it's also something, for example, if your teen is getting OT in schools, which I think depending on where you are may or may not be happening, that, in putting an independent living skill in the, individualized education plan, the IEP would be, a great thing for them to work on. Or similarly, we actually have OTs who just in private therapy, like in our clinic, this is something that they work on pretty regularly with teens. So they're not working, maybe on some of the things that younger kids are working on, whether it be, maybe more sensory issues or feeding issues or that kind of thing. They can actually work on cooking or getting, doing sort of a checklist of how you can get all those personal hygiene things going. So like I said, always happy to talk to people. I think there's only like a handful of us in the autism world who geek out over daily living skills.
Great. Yeah, and so you were just mentioning checklists that kind of got me thinking about assessments, and since you are conducting research on the intervention, would you be able to share maybe the ways that you're evaluating the skill gain and how that works? So how are you measuring that in the individuals?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. The one this has probably been one of the things we've really struggled with, those who are sort of, on the research team and my mentors as well. So we're using, one way that we're looking at outcome is we're using very common measure that most professionals, I think, are really familiar with, and parents probably groan when they see it, which is Vineland Adaptive Behavior Scales. And it's just a beast. It's pretty long. And so that really is our gold standard measure of adaptive behavior. So that's something that we give to families, before they start the group, after they start the group. And then we do sort of a 6-month follow-up to see, are skills maintained? Are they gaining in other skills? And the other way that we're evaluating change is really sort of, it's new but not new. I think it's more new to the field of kind of psychology and the field of autism. We use something called goal attainment scaling, which measures individual change. And what's nice about that is, for example, we had a group last night and we were working on laundry, and 2 of the teens actually do their own laundry. They're completely independent in it. And so they end up kind of coming into the group and they do some more, they take a leadership role. They talk about how they do it and what works and what doesn't work. So then the other 5 teens that are in the group don't have that skill. And so it's tricky about that is we want to be able to say, well, how does each individual change? So Johnny came in and had never done laundry, and so we want to make sure that we're measuring that change, whereas Joe, who came in, already had that skill. And so the goal attainment scaling really lets us say look at how much progress an individual is making in a given skill, as opposed to just saying, they've mastered it and, not being able to kind of see any movement. Knock on wood, so far we've seen some nice outcomes using both measures.
Okay. Yeah, that really makes sense. So you're able to get more of a global assessment using the Vineland, and then an individualized, more nuanced assessment using the goal attainment scaling. So that's great. Okay. So I'm just curious, what do you think has been one of the biggest challenges so far in developing and testing this intervention? So what are some of the things that you've learned so far doing this?
I've learned a lot. Being a psychologist and being able to pull out, a manual that someone has put together, I now realize how much, blood, sweat, tears, and time go into developing a manual. But, I think one of the biggest challenges is really just, at first I kind of went into this thinking that we could really target working on these skills with just the teen. My idea was actually to do this more as a school-based intervention because, again, anecdotally, so many families had said, independent living is a goal in the IEP, but there's no intervention for this. It's not really being addressed. And I thought, well, hey, this would be great to be able to do in a school setting. Mm-hmm. And most schools have a cafeteria and laundry, where if you've ever been to a therapy room, those things necessarily aren't readily available. I think my biggest learning curve coming out of it was that, the parents and caregivers of the teens with ASD are extremely competent and have really already done a lot in terms of working on all these different skills with their teen. But it's been a while since they've had to maybe teach some of these skills. And, parents always say, I haven't thought about this since potty training. And we did that when he was 4 or 5. I was kind of just thinking a lot of these things would come naturally, and haven't had to really kind of pull out my tool belt of how do I teach something like laundry or cooking or breaking down what you need to do once you get out of the shower and then get out of the door to go to school. Parent involvement became really, really important. And I think it's almost, if not, as equally important as the teen sessions. It's kind of having the parent come in and say, okay, here's how we're going to teach it. Here's how we're going to really motivate the teen to work on skills that are not fun. Who likes doing laundry?
Exactly.
Who likes, doing the dishes after they cook, that kind of thing. And we're going to get them to get better at it and acquire these things so that, down the road in a few years, they're going to be able to have a better outcome. Really turned into more of a family-based intervention. So it's been fun, but it's been, a lot of it has been getting parent feedback, like, what's helpful, what's not helpful. Do you feel like we need to do a refresher on some of these things versus not? But it's been, the families have just been wonderful.
Yeah, that's so exciting. So how far are you in actually putting together the manual? Do you think you can give us maybe some teasers as far as how it might be laid out?
It's pretty much, there's a very, very detailed skeleton laid out for every session. We've run the group previously with the manual, and we're rerunning it with the addition of a couple sessions. So we added on a session on grocery shopping, another money management session, and then a session on coping with kind of the transition to adulthood. So theoretically, this last group that I'm running will finish up in June. So I think by the end of June, I will have like a really, really solid version of the manual. Yeah. And then we're going to start another group in July. And so that group we would actually run with, the beautiful kind of finished product. And the way the manual is set up is, a very, very detailed, so that detailed enough. But I also tell my therapist, like, I don't want you to spend more than an hour prepping each week. Like, you should be able to pick up the manual, read the few pages that say what you're doing with the teens. I'm running the parent group right now. And then we've got all of our handouts, all of our videos, and all of our activities kind of prepped at this point. And we try to do the teens like activities, and they love videos. So we're always on the lookout for, we use the show The Middle, if people are familiar with that on CBS. Yeah, which has, just kind of a crazy, hectic family of 5. And there's actually so many, daily living skills embedded in all of the seasons of that show. And our teams really like that. So we use that a lot to typically emphasize like what you don't want to do or what isn't a good idea. But it breaks up, some of the monotony of talking about, why you should put deodorant on or why it's important to make sure you wash the shampoo out of your hair.
Yeah. Just really seeing it play out in real life.
Exactly.
Very nice. Yeah. So if there are any clinicians or researchers out there who might be looking to learn more about this at future conferences or events, are there any in particular where you can be found in 2017?
Yeah. We're actually presenting the results of the group that we finished up running at IMFAR, which is the International Meeting for Autism Research. It's in San Francisco in May this year.
Great.
And so that would be one place. We've got a poster, I believe it's Saturday afternoon. So right at the end of the conference. So if people want to stick around and chat, I will be there. Then we've submitted a manuscript as well. So it's under review. We're waiting to hear back, from the peer reviewers about it. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to get that data published here shortly, so that people, can learn more about it. And I'm, like I said, I'm always happy. Email is always a good way to get a hold of me, so I'm always happy to chat with families or professionals over email.
Okay, well, that's the perfect segue then. What would be a great way to get in touch with you down the road?
Yeah, so email is good. So my email is just my work email. So it's just Amie, but my name is spelled goofy. So it's AMIE.Duncan, which is DUNCAN @CCHMC.org. If you Google Amie Duncan and Cincinnati Children's, my bio at Cincinnati Children's will pop up, and my email address is listed.
Perfect. Okay, so email is the best way to reach you. And as far as learning about the daily living intervention, or if any folks in the Cincinnati area might be interested in signing up down the road or just learning more about your work, is there a certain website where they can find you?
Yes. So we do not have a website. That's in our sort of future plan, is to get something up and going. But if families are interested in participating, we have sort of a wait list that we've got going right now of people within sort of the greater Cincinnati area. So if people email me directly, I'm happy to kind of let them know when we anticipate we're running next groups and sort of what the process is. And I have a clinical research coordinator who does a lot of that. So I'd probably also have her get in touch with the family as well to address any questions.
Okay, that is good to know. All right. So before we wrap up here today, do you have any final things that you'd like to share with the audience, or is there anything that we haven't covered at this time?
Gosh, I mean, we've covered a lot. I think the only thing that I tell families clinically when I work with them a lot, and we're kind of talking about, I think this transition to adulthood can be extremely overwhelming in one sense, because, they often come after an assessment and we're saying, here are things to work on, or, here are things that might be good to fill in before we think about college or we look into getting a job. And I think the biggest thing is that I've seen in working with families is that sometimes they don't kind of embrace that idea that it really does sort of take a village, and that it's okay to ask, multiple people to be at the table with you at an IEP meeting, multiple professionals and providers, their kind of thoughts on, he's interested, in automobiles and mechanics, do you guys know anyone that he could maybe shadow, or that could be a mentor to him if he wants to get into that field or to get a job? And I think that's really important to kind of be able to, let go of really being the main advocate. Because so often it's, the mom and the dad who are really kind of advocating on behalf of the teen and going above and beyond and asking others, to kind of come in and take different pieces, because it is a lot. And that also models, I think, a lot of good skills for the teen to kind of step up and do some advocating as well. But then kind of seeing that it's okay to ask for help, or okay to go to others, to help build specific skills.
Excellent. That's a really good piece of advice. So thank you so much, Amie. I've really learned a ton.
No, well, thank you for having me. Yeah, and thank you for doing this. I think this is so needed, and I've listened to some of the other interviews, and I think it's just really kind of cool to hear what other people are doing out there and what other people's thoughts are on things. So thank you for doing this too.
Oh, thank you for saying that. And your work is really exciting. I think families are going to be very intrigued by this, and they are going to be bombarding your email account to learn more. And
that would be great. I'll take it.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait to hear about the release of your manual in the upcoming months whenever it's ready. So please let me know as things progress, and we'll be sure to share everything with the Autism Quality of Life community.
Great. Will do. Thank you so much, Jerry.
Okay. Thanks, Amie. Take care. Hey, Quality of Lifers. Thanks so much for joining me for today's episode with Dr. Amie Duncan. I really enjoyed learning about her daily living skills intervention. I can't wait for the manual to come out. If you'd like to learn more about today's episode, as always, you can listen to the show notes at www.autismqualityoflife.com. If you'd like to connect with me, Terry Kirkovich, you can find me on LinkedIn. If you happen to know of anyone, whether they be a business owner, a researcher developing an intervention, a family member developing a new program or service, or anyone at all who you really see as an autism innovator, I'd love to hear about their work and see whether they might be a good fit for the podcast. So don't hesitate to reach out. I'd love to hear from you. If you're not already following the podcast on social media, you can join us on Facebook or Twitter, hear our latest updates, as well as network with the Autism Quality of Life community. All right, thanks for joining us for Dr. Amie Duncan's episode of the Autism Quality of Life podcast, and I look forward to connecting with you soon. Take care.